Welcome to the Smarketing Show, hosted by award-winning B2B sales performance coach Rick Lambert, who has been selected by many of the world's most recognized companies to help them market and sell to win. Let's join Rick now.
Hi, I'm Rick Lambert. Welcome to the Smarketing Show. I'm coming off the road of 3 weeks of speaking events on sales and marketing. You know, it surprises me the level of interest in, Rick, what type of content should we create to tell our story as a business? And I thought, who better to have on the show today than Carl Schell? He's the director of content and publishing for an organization called Keypoint Intelligence. Great people, do a lot of great things in the tech sector. Now, here's a guy coming up, by the way. I'm going to ask him how you might want to think about creating content for your business. But, you know, he sits right in the cockpit with a team of content creators. They're producing like 24 blogs a month, 4 podcasts a month, a whole bunch of social content. They do a great newsletter called The Key Point of View. And Carl, after that intro there, sorry if I built it up too much, but you do a lot of great things. Maybe let the folks know what you do so they have perspective for the breadth of all the stuff you got going on.
Absolutely, and really grateful for the opportunity, Rick. Definitely looking forward to having some fun with you here today. I am the director of content and publishing at Keypoint Intelligence. Keypoint Intelligence being comprised of 2 organizations that are now more product types, which is the Buyers Lab BLI side and the Info Trends side. To help spell that out just a little bit more really quickly, the Buyers Lab side focuses on product level testing and research, while the Info Trends side focuses on market research and writing reports and strategy pieces for OEMs specifically. We do a lot more than that. We have our Uverse platform for e-commerce and sales enablement. We do awards. Obviously, BLIQ houses all of our Buyers Lab stuff, and the Info Center houses all of our Info Trends deliverables. On top of that, we do some custom work, both on the product side and the research side, as consulting engagements or custom tests. So we do a lot, and we talk to a lot of people. And we have access to, you know, an infinite number of data points and information that we like to tell stories about. We do that. We do those stories behind the wall, yes, but for the purpose of this show, Rick, you know, digital content, marketing, blogs, podcasts, videos, infographics, etc. Those are the kinds of stories we like to tell, and we try to figure out the best way to tell them.
And you know, for those of you that may be a little loose on what Keypoint Intelligence does, I mean, these guys have got more information. I think one of the challenges you've got to have is, you know, what do I pick within my, you know, content sphere, which I think a lot of organizations, they, you know, they're wrestling, Carl, the people I talk to, I don't think, with all due respect, a lot of people understand the long game of content. They're trying to, you know, do the quick hit ROI 30-day thing. And I think what you folks are doing is, you know, you're slowly educating, you're bringing people, you're attracting people because the content is organic, meaning you guys create it, it's fact-based, it's educational. But if you're watching right now, let's say someone's saying, okay, great, I know I need to come up with a content strategy. Maybe you could share what you see as some of the challenges, you know, for a small, medium-sized business or maybe an enterprise marketer creating content.
Absolutely. I think if we can just back it up for 1 second, I would say that it's important to understand, piggybacking off of your long game comment, that we are in the long game here. You know, we are currently in year 3 of a very aggressive, healthy blog initiative, I would say. It started right around the beginning of the pandemic, where we realized that things were going to change, and we had to change, and we wanted to do this. That is not to say that we did not blog before. It's just that our blog was nowhere near as active as what it has become, to the points that you mentioned earlier.
Hey, you're saying you're in year 3. Some people are thinking, hey, how do I get to day 3?
It's very true, and fortunately, we have a good mix of content creators, whether they're subject matter experts, whether they work in consulting, whether they're analysts, etc. So we have a diverse pool of people, and all of those people have a subject matter expertise area, domain expertise,
Hmm.
things that they can get thought leadership out. So let's take it
If
back
I
to
can,
your.
if I can just break that down, like you guys are very advanced, which is why I wanted to have you on today. But I think a lot of companies, they've got their own subject matter expertise. Someone called the reception person that gets all the normal questions coming in. Someone called the salesperson that gets all those questions from customers. Someone called the billing person that gets all. So I think some people think, oh, it's not for me. But I think the concepts you're talking about today apply regardless of what type of business you're in. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. I think it's a great point, Rick. We have people in sales who go to a show and maybe they're the only person at the show, so they want to get their name out there a little bit more, or push what happened at the show as a marketing thing, not just for us but other people, right?
Hmm.
So it becomes very organic, and people want to engage with it internally, and they want to be part of it. And that's really, as the person who kind of oversees all this, just really a blessing almost, right? You don't, there's no shortage of good ideas. There's no shortage of stories, and we just want to push those stories. Now, to get back to the.
To your point, though, I think a lot of companies wrestle with having their own people eat their own dog food, and they expect the customers only to consume the content. And so I can just share with you now, one of the ways we've got internal engagement, because it's so important, right, for your Keypoint Intelligence people to engage with the content, share the content, is we've actually set up as part of the sales activity mix is engagement on the content to make sure that the internal people understand what the content is coming out, and then they can share it with their customers. Sorry, but I just think not enough internal people understand and engage with the company content to give it the levity and momentum it needs. That's all.
Yeah, I'll jump on that one for a second here. The communication internally. Listen, communication is one of those things that it's never up to snuff 100%. I'm a big believer in that, and I'm a big believer in over communicating to get the message out. We do have a big meeting every Monday where all these people come together, and we have people from other groups who can share what's going on in this group to other people, right? We post the schedule a week earlier, so everyone knows what's coming out. And again, it's a healthy mix of content from a lot of different people. It's not the same 4 or 5 people who are always blogging. So we get that message out, and then kind of going back to the 3 challenges you wanted to know about. I think getting that message out about we have all this content and it's free and it's for you to digest and learn from. And connect with us about it as well. That's a challenge. I think, whether you're the tiniest company or the biggest company, oftentimes one of the biggest challenges they face is not everyone knows everything that we do. And, this opportunity here with you, Rick, is a great chance for us to help spread the word about all this content that we push on a weekly basis. And it comes in all different forms, and it's for all different types of people.
So Carl, I was speaking keynote speaker at the recent CDA meeting, Copier Dealer Association, large organizations, US based, and they asked me to come in and talk on the topic of cross-selling. And one of the points I was saying to them is your content mix has to not necessarily make you look like, your original business, but it's got to help you cross-sell. And I know you folks wrestle with that because you do so much, right, for so many. But maybe specific challenges like, I think you would agree, like SEO might be an example of a challenge. Like, how do I optimize the content? Maybe, give us some of those challenges.
Sure. And I hardly think that we're the experts on SEO, by the way. I hardly think that we're the best content creators in the world.
You're pretty good. You're pretty good. You guys are good.
The achieving the best SEO is obviously a key in today's world. You want to have eyeballs on your content. You want people in and out of your industry or your wheelhouse to be able to find you. And this is something that, we wrestle with. We play around with keywords, and obviously the analytics at the end of the day help flesh out the story and provide a lot more color commentary,
Mm-hmm.
for how well you're doing. So I would agree with you there.
So what type of analytics, if I may ask, would you use to measure the search engine optimization kind of strength of a piece of content? Like, how would you measure that? Because a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah, it's more than just eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
Eyeballs obviously help, but it's, the length of time these eyeballs are staying on a piece of content, or their ears for that matter, if they're listening to a podcast, what have you.
Because there are tools that our team use to kind of, give it a weighted value, and you could change the title, you can change kind of the inside. The big thing that I think you do really well, which is a challenge for a lot of companies, is they make the mistake of creating all this promotional content that I always joke, like, it's like, if you record a TV program, I always fast forward through the commercials. And so if I see content that's promotional, like, I'm past it quick. So how do you feel about educational versus promotional?
Yeah, there's a delicate balance between a lot of things. It's kind of like a social media rule not to just be over promotional of yourself all the time. Drop something personal in there every now and again. I think you see on LinkedIn and Twitter companies putting out like Happy Easter, Happy Passover messages, especially at this time of year. And you don't want to do that all the time. You certainly want to have a call to action and something that helps get you to, you can be talking about Canon, or you could be talking about Marco, or you could be talking about an ISV, whatever, in the blog, but ultimately you're going to try to funnel them into the site somehow, whether it's to a podcast or whether it's behind the wall, et cetera. And getting that level of engagement and not being too promotional, but still promoting yourself enough here is a wise move. That said, we do promotional pieces that are strictly promotional, where we're promoting a piece of content, let's say on the info center. It could be for a forecast that we just did on A4, and we thought that this was interesting, so we tease it here and we promote it. So plenty of that stuff does go around, and when you produce at the level that we do, you're going to get a fair amount of that stuff. But for every one piece like that, there are 4 or 5, 6 other pieces that are helping promote other brands, other people, other companies, and we're allowed to kind of project our thought leadership, if you will, and inject that into conversations to, like we're having, just have a nice free-flowing conversation of expertise and industry experience.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do great work for your customers. Actually, you create content for your customers, which lightens their load. And I just love the guys or ladies, by the way, that, Carl, they got the new brochure of their product, and they post page 1 of the brochure, and then, oh, you haven't had enough of that? Boom, here's the backside. Post. Anyway, I think people miss the boat on what would damage your company brand or your personal brand. Hey, how do you guys, from one of the challenges we see is people don't know, should I write it in a blog? Should I do it in social posts? Should I do a podcast? Like, how do you guys figure out the best medium if I've got a story I want to get out there?
Yeah, definitely a good challenge to list here, Rick. Thank you. Ultimately, I think one of the themes here is we want a healthy mix of content, topical, but we also want a healthy mix of types of content that we deliver in. And we, again, want to tell the best possible story. So how do we achieve that with blogs, podcasts, videos, infographics, webinars, stuff like that? It's a conversation. Sometimes it's a very quick conversation. It's a blog. Yeah, no problem. Just write up 500 words and promote this piece, etc. But if someone comes and is like, well, I got these 2 people and we're going to sit down and have a conversation, my gut and my mind immediately go to, this sounds like a podcast, because no one wants to read long Q&As with multiple people anymore. You don't want to have 3,000 word articles on your site. It's just not smart marketing at that point.
Yeah, and
it's not marketing, correct, Rick?
Yeah, you're picking up, buddy. That's why you're in your seat. You are. Hey, and if you're a seasoned business person out there thinking, no, I read, just take a look at your kids that are millennials or Gen Zs and ask yourself, okay, do they read? And I thought, Carl, coming into our conversation today, you made a really good point, and that a lot of people make the mistake, I think, of thinking, oh, we're going to create a blog, as opposed to coming up with the story first, then saying, okay, what is the best medium? Like you gave the example there of a conversation. No one's going to read a conversation, they may, but how about getting your message out? That's a problem for people too. Like, okay, I got content And I think one of the things that they wrestle with is, where do I get it out? And everybody tries to get it out through their own channels. But I think what you guys have done really well is you'll align with partners to kind of ricochet or bridge into their ecosystem. And we've had customers. We're getting heavy into the webcast now. We just see it's still very, very popular, and how companies have come together. So you might have a technology dealer with an insurance company, and they're talking about cybersecurity, and now you can invite all these different ecosystems that are complementary, non-competitive. And I see you folks do a lot of that in the industry that really supports everybody's interest but helps the end user.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach, right, Rick? You're in marketing. It can't just be one thing.
Yeah.
When it comes to our own things, we get the message out there in a few ways. The first way would be that every story, podcast, whatever, gets a social post on Twitter and LinkedIn. And then we have people, in the subject matter expert, analyst group, consulting, whoever, sales too, sharing, liking, et cetera, getting it into their feeds, and then other people seeing it. The object there is obviously to get some engagement with some comments, and maybe someone actually comments and wants to contact us about something. So that's one way. Newsletter, again, important, key point of view. We used to have 2 newsletters that we would push content through, free content. We've streamlined that down to 1 with the nifty name, the Key Point of View. Love it. And we're getting really good engagement on a weekly basis. This is a newsletter that comes out once a week, Thursday afternoons Eastern time. And we're just seeing, again, a healthy mix of people visiting. Our engagement rate is hovering like 9-10%, which from my perspective is pretty good for a newsletter.
Yep.
People are clicking on links and reading stories, and it's not just the eyeballs on the stories, it's the time they're spending on the stories. Are they actually are they just looking at the headline and skimming it, and it's like a 3-minute read that everyone is averaging 30 seconds on? Well, that might not be the best. But if it's a 500-700 word article and people are actually spending 5-7 minutes on it, they're probably thinking about it and taking their time with it. And that, to me, means quality content.
No, absolutely. And, one of the things that's worked for us is we'll actually share the same content like in different mediums, right? So we may have this podcast, for example, we'll do a third-party write-up on our conversation, tie the video in, link to YouTube. So I think people sometimes they build this thing and then they hope people will come, but they got to get it out there through different mediums, through partners. So Carl's challenge is there, by the way, just if you're tracking, make sure your content's optimized, meaning it's through the eyes of Google. We treat Google as our customer, that it's friendly content and it's using terms that would attract kind of your target audience. He talked about being educational versus promotional. Hopefully you're aware of that one. Use the right medium, or different mediums. And I think your point about like using partners in different ecosystems, it would really expand your reach. Hey,
can I jump in there really quick about the partnerships? I mean, this is a really interesting one because Keypoint Intelligence as an organization is talking to and partnering with people in our industry, I think more than we ever did before, especially even on like the analyst side or the news aggregation side. We're doing things with Andy Slawetsky. We've worked with the Kanadas. These are things that, sorry to say, we just weren't doing 5-6 years ago. Now, we didn't have the blog capacity that we did back then that we do now. And leadership changes and different visions and stuff like that. And I feel like we're in a really good place with these partnerships. And I look forward to, it's like syndicating your content, which is another important part of this whole conversation. But it's doing it to a very targeted audience. So it works well for us.
No, totally. I mean, look at what we're doing today, right? I mean, we met online, we're sharing these things. Hey, what would be, so I'm a business owner, I'm a marketing leader. Unfortunately, someone threw me the title of marketing in my company. What would be some quick pro tips that you would give, given your experience, for someone to make sure they've got a good content strategy?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what we've talked about can kind of be summed up in this section. I've mentioned a healthy mix of content, not just the topics that you're covering, but also the content types. You don't want to just have static blogs with no images in them all the time. You want to mix it up, you know. Don't change it all to, oh, we're suddenly going to write all in infographics and be really brief and short with things. But this is definitely an important one. Again, not being so self-promotional. Don't just write about yourself. Use other people. There's so many marketing opportunities out there, and those marketing opportunities eventually turn into dollar opportunities, right? You start talking with someone, it starts off as a very basic conversation, and all of a sudden the canvas is filled up like a Jackson Pollock painting, and then you have to make sense of all the splotches on the canvas, and turning that into a bigger relationship is again, Rick, to your original point, the long game, right?
Yeah.
So this is definitely something that I would stress. Now, the other thing is, I'm a words guy. I'm not a numbers guy. Yes, we produce a lot of content. So the quantity part is spoken for, but I'm really impressed with the quality of the thought leadership that's coming out of our stuff. It really spans everyone, you know, the analysts talking to subject matter experts, the subject matter experts getting out their opinions to not just increase our brand exposure and showing people what we can do, but also showing what that particular person can do, right? That person has domain expertise, whether it's in 3D print or A4 or software or product, whatever it is, they have experience and they have opinions, and getting those opinions out is also important. It's kind of my third point here, Rick, is you want to be opinionated. You don't want to be so vanilla all the time, right? You don't want to write a blog where you're regurgitating a press release. We don't do that. We don't want to do that. We want to have some thought leadership put in there. And if there's a third tip that I would give, it's that one.
And you know, you mentioned to me in our prior conversations about headlines being so important on the top end of the content, the title, which, you know, I did a session last week at our digital sales bootcamp, and we were focusing on, believe it or not, like how to do a prospecting email. And everybody's so consumed in the body of content, but they forget the subject line, which is really the title in a piece of content. So when we name this podcast, you know, something, you know, I don't know, we'll come up with something creative for this one, but I think people underestimate the title, because when we walk up to buy a newspaper, I'm going old school with you here. You're standing between two newspapers. How do you decide which one you buy? Often it's the headline that will grab you to push you to select that content versus something else. But hey, Carl, I just want to say thanks so much for sharing today. I thought your point earlier about having a content schedule and communicating it, I hope people pick that up, because a lot of organizations, they got Jimmy over here doing the marketing, and Susan's doing the sales, and Bill's doing operations, but no one knows what's coming out of the oven in terms of content. I thought that was a really good idea you had. Now, if I can let the audience in on something, I'll tell you, you're pretty good with content, given you're actually a songwriter in after hours. So maybe you're writing songs with the content. I don't know, but it seems to be working for you guys at Keypoint Intelligence.
Rick, I'll tell you, that was a gross exaggeration. I'm sorry if I let it out that way. I'm actually a drummer and a percussionist, and a former one at that. So I never can write melody or harmony. I only write rhythm. I can help arrange, but I was in a band years ago, and it was a lot of fun. And a lot of my creative spark comes from music, and we've connected on that. And it's just a very important part of who I am, and for me, one of the most important parts of the world.
Awesome. Hey, well, thanks for joining me today on this marketing show, and keep up the great rhythm you got going there at Keypoint Intelligence. Thanks for joining us, Carl.
Thank you very much, Rick.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Smarketing Show. If you enjoyed today's show, please like, share, and subscribe to get the latest B2B insights to help you market and sell to win.